On that date, it was a commercial decision by British Steel, and it is clear, despite all their words, that the opposition would have done nothing different.
Michael Irving!
Would my right honourable friend agree that defence cuts of £6 billion would lead to a massive loss of jobs in defence industries up and down the country? Would my right honourable friend also agree? Would my right honourable friend also agree on the hypocrisy of those who call on the one hand for the maintenance of defence contracts in public and on the other plan in private for defence reductions?
My honourable friend makes a good point. Our policy, both for nuclear and for conventional defence, is clear, has been set out in a number of documents, and is properly costed. The opposition do not say where they stand, cannot say where they stand, and cannot admit the jobs that would be lost if their party's policy was actually carried out. Their party conference has 3 times voted to cut £6 billion from the defence budget, and we can see the extent to which that would devastate the defence industry and the defence of this country.
Max Madden.
Number 5.
I refer the honourable gentleman to the answer I gave some moments ago.
Madden.
May I ask the Prime Minister a question that I gave notice to his office about earlier this morning? Namely, will he arrange for X-ray equipment and metal detection equipment to be immediately installed at Armley Prison in Leeds? I ask this following a serious breach of security at the prison last Friday, when a visitor inside the prison drew a knife and sought to attack another visitor. As this is the latest in a series of serious breaches at prisons, will the Prime Minister now call upon the Home Secretary, who has clearly lost control of his own department and no longer enjoys the confidence of the public, either to resign or to sack him now?
Well, firstly, may I say I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman for giving me notice of the detailed point that he wished to raise this afternoon. I can say to him that security at prisons holding Category A prisoners is already very tight, with rigorous searching procedures, but we are, in addition, providing X-ray equipment, as the honourable gentleman suggests we should. A contract has been placed for the supply of X-ray equipment to prisons which hold Category A prisoners. They have to be specially constructed, and they will be delivered as soon as possible. Upon his last point, I have complete confidence in my right honourable friend.
David Evernett. Number 6, sir.
I refer my honourable friend to the answer I gave some moments ago.
Evernett.
Does my right honourable friend agree that to base defence policy on defence cuts as the North Sea oil of the 1990s is irresponsible and misguided? Is my right honourable friend aware that an opposition front-bench spokesman for the Treasury has actually stated this as a belief?
Must ask questions about the government's policy.
Would my right honourable friend confirm that Labour remain unsound on defence?
Yes, it is clear, as my honourable friend says, that Labour would cut the defence budget to ribbons. They have proved they cannot be trusted on defence.
I think the Prime Minister should answer the question for which he has responsibility, please.
I am seeking to precisely do that, Mr. Speaker. And it is perfectly clear, Mr. Speaker, that whilst the defence of this country is the first priority of this government, that might not be the first priority of the opposition if they make the cuts in defence that they have committed themselves to.
That concludes Prime Minister's questions from Thursday, January 16th, and a very rare occasion when the Speaker called the Prime Minister to order. Next week on this program, another session of Prime Minister's questions from the British House of Commons. If you would like more information about the British House of Commons, write to the Public Information Office at this address. To write to Prime Minister John Major, use this address. And to contact any member of the House of Commons, use this address.
Wednesday, the United States House of Representatives returns from its winter district work period. The second session of the 102nd Congress reconvenes Wednesday. Our live coverage begins at noon Eastern Time. This is Road to the White House, C-SPAN's weekly look at the candidates and the issues surrounding the 1992 race for the presidency. From now through Election Day, tune to C-SPAN and Road to the White House, your primary source for election coverage.
Coming up next on Road to the White House, a look at the candidates on the ballot in next month's New Hampshire presidential primary. Also ahead, the first campaign commercials of the political season, now on the air in New England. Then, highlights of the president's trip this past Wednesday to New Hampshire's seacoast. And finally, Republican presidential candidate Pat Buchanan. But first, the New Hampshire ballot. Here is a list of the candidates Democrats, Republicans, and Independents in New Hampshire will choose from in the February 18th primary. Up next on Road to the White House, the first campaign commercials of the 1992 political season. The presidential candidates began airing their television spots this past week on New England stations. From now through Election Day, C-SPAN will be showing you the campaign ads on the air around the country. These are some of the paid political commercials voters in New Hampshire are now seeing.
Hi, I'm Larry Agron. The Cold War is over. As president, I'll bring home our troops from Europe and Japan. I'll cut military spending in half and return a peace dividend to every American household. A peace dividend of $1,850 every year for health care, education, and jobs. You have the power to make this peace dividend a reality by voting for a new president committed to new priorities.
The people of New Hampshire know better than anyone. America's in trouble. Our people are really hurting. In the 80s, the rich got richer, the middle class declined, poverty exploded. Politicians in Washington raised their pay and pointed fingers, but no one took responsibility. It's time we had a president who cares, who takes responsibility, who has a plan for change. I'm Bill Clinton, and I believe you deserve more than 30-second ads or vague promises. That's why I've offered a comprehensive plan to get our economy moving again, to take care of our own people and regain our economic leadership. It starts with a tax cut for the middle class and asks the rich to pay their fair share again. It includes national health insurance, a major investment in education, training for our workers, tough trade laws, and no more tax breaks for corporations to move our jobs overseas. Take a look at our plan and let me know what you think. I hope you'll join us in this crusade for change. Together, we can put government back on the side of the forgotten middle class and restore the American dream.
Paid for by Clinton for President.
What's happening in the world economy is like a hockey game, where others guard their goal to keep our products out while we leave our net open. It's cost us jobs and destroyed companies. We're becoming a low-wage nation, and all George Bush can do is go to Japan and beg for a few concessions. I'm Bob Kerrey, and if I'm president, the time for begging is through. I'll tell Japan if we can't sell in their market, they can't sell in ours. And if they don't get the message, they'll find out this president can play a little defense, too.
Fight back, America. Paid for by Kerry for president.
Democrats or Republicans, is this a real choice? At every level of government, they produce the same results. Big deficits, high taxes, waste. The Libertarian Party has a better way. Cut spending, cut taxes, cut government. You can choose the Libertarian Party February 18th if you ask for the Libertarian ballot. Ask for the Libertarian ballot. The Libertarian Party, a real choice. For information, call this number.
They said he couldn't win, this kid from an old mill town. But he beat the corrupt county politicians and won long-shot elections to Congress and the U.S. Senate. Guts and determination helped Paul Tsongas beat the odds and go on to beat cancer. Today, while President Bush ignores our economic crisis, Paul Tsongas tackles it head-on. Getting America back on track won't be easy, but Paul Tsongas has never been afraid to swim against the current.
Those are some of the campaign commercials now airing on New England television stations. New Hampshire will host the first in the nation presidential primary in 1 month. Coming up next, the president's visit to the Granite State. After arriving Wednesday morning at the former Pease Air Force Base in Portsmouth, Mr. Bush held a meeting with business leaders. His campaign trip included a visit at the Textron Davidson interior trim plant in Dover, a meeting with insurance employees at the Liberty Mutual office along New Hampshire's seacoast, a visit at Cabletron Systems in Rochester, a manufacturer of computer software, and a meeting before the Portsmouth Rotary Club.
Song leader.
The president also visited Exeter, New Hampshire, where he held a town meeting. Joining the president was Governor Judd Gregg, chairman of the state's Bush Quail 92 Committee, U.S. Senator Bob Smith, and Congressman Bill Zellett. President Bush delivered brief remarks, then took questions from the audience. At the conclusion of the town meeting, which lasted about half an hour, he shook hands with the 300 invited participants.
In the words of Yogi Berra, it's deja vu all over again. But I'm so thrilled to be able to do this. It's my honor this morning to introduce you to the governor of New Hampshire, Judd Gregg, who is then going to introduce us to the current and future President of the United States.
It's obviously a great pleasure, Maureen, to have another chance to visit Exeter on, as we did a few years ago, with the President. The President has a lot of ties to Exeter. I think he's the only national leader in our country who's played baseball on the Exeter Baseball Diamonds. And he's been here a lot over the years. He knows New Hampshire, but he especially knows Exeter. It's a great pleasure to have him here in Exeter. The President of the United States, George Bush.
I am very, very pleased to be back. Mike, how are you? This guy meets me at Pease every time I come in there. Exeter Rose Grower. Let me just say how really pleased I am to be here and to thank you for turning out. I want to make a couple of comments and then mainly questions, isn't it, Judd? First, I want to thank the governor for being at my side. You know my and Barbara's affection for Governor Judd Gregg and for Hugh and Kay, old, longtime friends who stay in touch and have kept me informed of this state, both of them, both Greggs, of the problems that we face in this state. Now I'm talking political, I'm talking about hardship for people that are hurting. And one of the things I'm pleased to be able to do here is to at least let the people of this state know that even though I am president and do have 2 or 3 other responsibilities, that when people are hurting, we care. We get the message there. We read the mail. We can understand. And I just wanted to get that out loud and clear because we're in a political year and you hear a lot of people that have discovered New Hampshire for the first time running around trying to say something different. Of course we care. Secondly, I am very grateful not only to the governor but to Senator Bob Smith, Senator Rudman, who couldn't be with us, Bob Smith here today, who are doing a superb job, and then your congressman, another dear friend, a man I respect, Bill Zeliff. These are leaders in the Congress, and they talk about pledges and all this. Let me tell you something. I took a pledge when I was sworn in, the oath of office, and what I need a pledge about is to get more congressmen and senators like Senator Smith and Gordon Humphrey, who was in the Senate and is supporting me, and your congressman here, Bill Zeliff, and Warren Rudman, and then we would be able to control this federal spending better, and then we would be able to see that we get these tax improvements that I've been asking for. So that's the pledge I want, is the pledge from the people to give us more, and you're going to have to use your influence out of the state because you've done pretty darn well in the state, in the United States Congress. So that was one point I wanted to make. The other one is that people say, well, you know, you're in trouble in New Hampshire. Well, that may be. But I'm here to listen. I'm here to take the questions. I'm here to say, hey, there's a lot to do in partnership. The federal government, the state government, where you've got superb leadership, and the people themselves. And of course we care. And I you know, somebody gave me the analogy of a country western song about a train, hoping they see the light at the end of the tunnel's not a train coming through. And I trumped it with saying, well, if you're going to, you remember the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band one, if you got any country music people here, if you're gonna see a rainbow, you got to stand a little rain. Well, New Hampshire stood more than its share of rain, and job hurting, and families wondering how they're going to make their ends meet. But there is going to be a rainbow out there. There's some fundamentals that are pretty darn good, and yet we've got to do better. And the last point I want to make is I hope that you will listen to the State of the Union message. I have proposed 3 straight years growth agenda programs, not some fancy quick fix that's going to have broad appeal at an election time, but things that would stimulate this economy. And now we're putting this all together again with new additions to it to take these proposals to the American people. And then what I hope we can do is rally the American people and get the economy moving by sound, investment-oriented treatment of the tax code. And that is what's needed, and still hold the line on spending. One of the few benefits of that budget agreement was that we have caps on the excesses of federal spending, those things that can be controlled, and I want to keep them there. I do not want to bust the one restraint that is on the spenders in the United States Congress. So having said that, I hope you'll ask the questions. We'll have a good health program that I think will have appeal to the voters here, because it's family, it keeps things close to the people themselves rather than having a lot of mandated benefits out of Washington. And this is the last point. You know, I'm just back from a rather spectacular trip to Europe. I mean, to Asia. I say spectacular. You try getting the flu at a dinner. I have the feeling that people in New England, and certainly having been a neighbor of this state for so long, understand that even presidents get the flu. I said over there, even Democrats get it from time to time. But you got to admit, I did it in a dramatic way. Having said that, exports account for a tremendous amount of the growth in this country. A lot of the jobs, I think it's estimated, I was talking to Bob and Bill coming over here, 35 to 40,000 jobs in New Hampshire related to exports. So please don't buy this protection legislation that the Democrats and some others are putting out, this idea that we can shrink back inside. I want to put America first in the sense of the values, in the sense of getting this economy to be first, but not in the sense of some kind of protection legislation that is going to shrink markets and throw the working people in New Hampshire further out of work. Let's expand these markets. Now, fire away. Shoot, any questions? Don't be, even if they're tough ones. I know we got a few fans in here for someone else. Bring them up. Hell, I'm not, just you're second. You've got the first guy, and then we'll be right over.
First, let me say that with the conditions in the country today, without government in deficit, most every state in the union in deficit, most every municipality in the country is in deficit. Never mind the household. What do we have to do? And I'm glad you brought us to them. To get the congressmen and senators in this country to realize that we have millions of people without jobs, homeless, without health. These fellas have the gall to vote themselves a raise. What can we do other than vote out every incumbent? I hate to see that, but I mean, what do we have to do to get the message to these people in Washington?
Well, I think this kind of meeting helps. Fortunately, you have a congressional delegation, the ones I mentioned from this state, that understand that. They fight against the excesses of Congress. One of the things that I proposed or seconded the motion on were these the proposals that are there, and they're bipartisan, I might add, for Congress to reform itself in terms of proliferation of committees and needing reforms. Congress to adhere to the same laws that the American people have to adhere to. One of the comments that I made after the Clarence Thomas hearings was that that needed to be done. They ought not to exempt themselves from the laws you and I have to honor. And this congressional delegation understands that. These people here do. So you got to spill over and use your influence across the border. 2 ways, I might add, Maine and Massachusetts, good places to start. So try that one. But no, you got a good point. I mean, look, I'm not up here to assign blame. I'll take my share of the blame. I don't take it for not caring or not understanding. I do. Barbara does. I hope we have projected the family concerns that we feel. We've tried to do that in this job. But I'm not here to blame. But I am here to remind the voters up here that in 2 previous State of the Unions, I have proposed growth initiatives that would have stimulated the economy. Now I'm going to do it again. And this time I'm going to look the American people in the eye, as I did in the past, say, all right, people are hurting more now. I've just come back from the state of New Hampshire, and a lot of people are out of work. And if you really care, pass this package, and then we can put it back into politics and debate it for the rest of this political year. But get something done that's going to get the people of this state and of this country back to work. That's the approach I'm going to take. And now we had one here, and then I'll come over there. Yeah.
We had a wonderful Surgeon General who led us in health care in the man of Dr. Chick Coop.
Yep.
Can he help us with some of our health problems in the future?
Yes, he can. He's a good man. I think he wants to, too. I saw him the other day, and one of the things that Dr. Coop, who came into office, and people said, well, this guy's a little conservative for the national agenda. He wasn't. Very sensitive guy. One of the things that he has done, and this is a sensitive subject, it's on my mind again, because yesterday I met with Magic Johnson, is to project the idea that treating AIDS is a health problem. We are concerned about it. We care about it. When Barbara holds an AIDS baby in her arms, she's trying to express the compassion that both of us feel. When I go out to NIH and meet with those people that are afflicted with it, we have to do it on a health problem. Prevention, research and development, caring, making people understand this now is a national health problem. And Magic, who's on that commission, following in the footsteps of the educational that Chick Coop has put forward to the beginning, is saying, look, lifestyle's important. He said, I made some mistakes, and he did. He made some big ones. But now I want to help get this thing out for open debate, compassionate treatment as a disease, and see what we can do, and then work with the office, the bully pulpit of the White House, and Chick Coop and others, our new solicitor, our new Surgeon General, to educate people. We've got to treat with the health aspect through prevention and research. So I think he will have we'd love to have him involved. Yeah. Yes, sir.
National Health Plan, what do you have planned that is going to help the 35 million people that don't have health insurance?
The question in the back is a very important question. What are you going to do about the 35 million who don't have health insurance? What we've done so far is emphasizing prevention, emphasizing, inoculations and this kind of thing. Now, at the State of the Union, I will have what I think is the proper, if you'll permit me to hold back some of the details, but a comprehensive health care program that does not increase the federal mandates, but does bring protection to the numbers of people that are uninsured. Therein lies the big problem. So we will have a comprehensive, that's only 2 weeks away, so stay tuned, and I think it'll be done with the values I think of as New Hampshire values in mind, without busting the budget. I ask you, when you hear all these people that have just discovered New Hampshire on the road map coming up here with these health plans, ask them what that's going to do to the people that pay the taxes, as well as those who need the health care. So I think we've got a good program, and I hope we can get the support from everybody in this room. Yeah, in the back, in the middle.
I think, if I can just comment, I think we've got time for about 2 more questions.
Oh.
We'd like to have everybody come up and have a chance to shake hands with the President. And we want to...
Anybody got a real controversial one or want to make a statement? I want some guy that really wants to be tough, some tough guy. Who is it? This guy in the middle? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. President.
Who you for first, and then let's hear the question.
I don't think you want to know.
No, but really, this shouldn't be softballs. I want it.
Well,
so call it as you see it, and you'll get it back.
I'm a registered Democrat.
All right, sir.
Haven't made up my mind yet. 4 years ago, you said you proclaimed yourself the education president.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a student at the University of New Hampshire, and to the best of my knowledge, New Hampshire is 51st out of 50 states. We're behind Puerto Rico as well, as far as state funding for education. And I just haven't seen very much evidence of your being the education president.
Yeah. The man asks a very important and very fair question. First place, federal spending, and I can understand why you might not, sense this, is up significantly in the Department of Education. It's not going to be done. As you know, federal spending is 6 or 7% of the total education budget for the country. Educational spending, leave out federal, is also up substantially. Here's the good news. We do have a good program. I went to the 50 governors. We put politics aside on this one, believe me. We've got the national education goals, 6 goals now. They were agreed by Democrats and Republicans alike. They are now encompassed in a program called America 2000, which is a national education strategy. It literally calls for revolutionizing the schools. Yes, it requires some more federal spending, but we're budgeting that. It requires much more participation of parents and of communities. I addressed a national chamber meeting yesterday on it in terms of people, Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives, coming together to say, we got to do it differently. And please take a look at that program. It is sensible. I'm determined to keep it out of the political cross current, but I don't care about my personal label. I'm committed to education. This program, under the able leadership of Lamar Alexander, is one of the things that is beginning to get to the American consciousness. And you and I might differ on this one. I still like the idea of parents being able to choose. When I came out of the military, to the GI Bill 1,000 years ago, nobody said, hey, you got to go to school A or school B, university A or B, or high school extension program A, B, or C. The person could choose. And choice in the state of Minnesota, formerly run by a Democratic governor, has resulted in educational excellence. And so I favor, one of the concepts of this is choice. Another one is doing better in math and science. Another is to continue the increases that we've already started on Head Start, Ready to Learn. Another one is to have, you're never too old to learn. Even I, and it's not just show business, have a little computer there and I'm trying to learn it and I'm doing something, and I hope it's an example that you're never too old to learn, although I'm having a few difficulties with the cursor. But the thing that troubles me is I don't think that we've gotten that across. It is a good, sensible program. It's really just starting, but it holds the answer, because we are not going to be as competitive in this world if we don't do better in math or science. So another part of it is voluntary testing at the 4th, 8th, and high school level. And it's voluntary, but there's nothing wrong with testing. There's nothing wrong with standards, so a school knows whether it's keeping up with other schools. We've gotten away from that sense of discipline. And then I want the schools to be drug-free, and so a kid can go and learn in a safe environment. So those are some of the ingredients of our program called Education America 2000. Can't
take one more and then
all right. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
It seems that as the economy gets worse and worse, that more and more people are turning to the sales of drugs, and more kids are using drugs as they see the economy getting toughened and their families suffering. What do you propose to do about this problem, because it seems to keep getting worse?
Let me repeat the question, because I want to argue with the premise a little bit, not totally. The premise is it seems to be getting worse on narcotics, drugs, amongst young people. And what do you propose to do about it? We have a national drug strategy. We are making significant, if not dramatic, progress amongst young people, for example, in the use of cocaine, down by 10%. Where we're hurting as a society is the 35 and older, kind of the addicted crowd is not shaking it. Education is a part of it. Treatment is a part of it. Interdiction, a much more successful interdiction effort, is a part of it. But the national drug strategy is working. And then there's another ingredient to this. It's the private partnership where you, under the leadership of a guy named Jim Burke, we're spending $1 million, they are, not government, $1 million a day with, I don't know whether you've seen them, with advertisements, pro bono, advertisements trying to help educate children and parents that drugs are, turn off of drugs. And we are making progress. Made big progress in marijuana, made big progress in cocaine use, and yet we've still got a long way to go. So we'll keep fighting the problem, but I just want to give a little hope out there that these figures are fairly encouraging in terms of the age group that you asked about. And a last pitch is this on it. I still think that the people of New Hampshire, in spite of the economic problems and being out of work, still really epitomize for a lot of the rest of the country what Barbara and I talk about is family values. I worry about the decimation of the American family. Everything we do, like child care, we try to make it that the family has a choice, or education, that the family does. Barbara's out there trying to read to the kids. And so I do think that family involvement is vital to the success. The federal government cannot get this drug thing done by itself. We got a program. We've got to keep the families together and the families involved in solving this. And that isn't a vote getter, and that isn't going to outpromise some Democrat halfway across the state. But it is something I feel very, very strongly about, and will continue to try to help the American people understand. You got to read to your kids. You got to hug them. You got to lift them up and dust them off and put them back into the game. And if you don't do that, they drift off into some of this mire. In the inner city, they need help on it too.
On behalf of all of us, the townspeople of Exeter, a group who truly share your family values. I can say that we got winning teams all the time because we got great support for our teams. But we'd like to present you with the history of Exeter. It's signed by the author, Nancy Merrill, and I would love someday to know that this would be in the Bush Library.
You can know that right now. That's great. Did Nancy sign it?
She signed it.
Just want to be sure. Is she here?
Yes. Nancy, I know Nancy is here. Where are you?
If she's here, we got to get the picture, so we will put it in the library.
All right.
Listen, I apologize that we're really almost just getting started, but this is not show business. I mean, when the guy asked a very good question on education, it gave me a chance to say what I think, but also it shows what concerns people. And so I hope you don't feel this, whoops, even the guy on the end of the table here feels that it's just some kind of a useless exercise. But message, I care, we're trying, we need help, we have had and will continue to have, I think, sound and sensible programs. And let's not forget this. It was 1 year ago that I had to make a very fateful decision that affected the lives of a lot of Americans. And we saw instantly the return of American pride. The country came together. No matter how you feel about when we should have gone to war, the country came together. I want to use that same kind of leadership to bring the country together now on the social problems that affect us and on getting this economy going and getting New Hampshire back to work. And I need your help. Thank you very, very much. Thanks for coming. You wrote me?
Get a back up, please.
How you going, pal? Good to see you.
So you're going to have to back up, please.
You met me when you were a little, but you got so big I don't recognize you. Listen, if I start signing this, I get a
Strap on, please. Back up.
That's okay. I thought John Henry was going to be here. Ted's in it. Good to see you. Mike, you're losing weight. Watch him bring everybody in. You are. All right, good luck to you. Thanks. Yeah, we'll go to the middle and bring everybody to you. Are we? Good question. Thanks for opening it up. Good to see you. Good to see you guys.
Give our love to Bob.
Oh, isn't she doing great? I'm so proud of her. After I had that slight bout with the flu, Barbara was magnificent.
Don't Bob.
Don't you worry about it, man. Can't a guy get the flu?
Macon is working on a cable from Air Force One, so I told the girls.
You got it. Good.
President, I'm working with Paul Cellucci on your re-election campaign in Massachusetts.
He's doing good.
He's terrific. I'm on his finance committee. He's one of the greatest guys in the world.
I'll give him my very best.
I will.
We're
going to work very hard for you.
Good.
I hope to see you again.
Nice to see you all. Thanks. Where'd you come over from? Yeah, sure.
Haverhill, Mass. I'm about 20 minutes
Haverhill?
from here. Yeah.
Andover still there?
Yep. My wife's a city councilor in Haverhill.
This is what, you know, this is what irks me about some of these, irks me about some of these Democrats. They say, Bush doesn't know about New Hampshire. They've just discovered it. My God, I could see my house from where we landed, and I come up here and whip these guys in baseball 5 years in a row, and I know the state, but it's that's the politics. I will. Good to see you.
I supported you in 1988 in the primary.
Fantastic. Are you? Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here. Good to see you. Thanks a lot. Well, I feel all right. We got to just get the message out.
Don't let the media dictate it.
They try. Yeah. Good to see you.
Step back and let the crowd come to you.
Oh, back here?
Mr. President, we need you to step back here. We're going to bring people through and shake hands and come out, okay?
How's that? I signed it on
Steve, take the top of the receiving line. Right there.
You're going to get Steve.
How are you?
Only a couple at a time.
Nice to see you. Thanks for taking the time. Sure. Shoot it fast. Shoot it fast. All right, we got it. Good to see you. Thank you all for being here on this chilly day. Thanks a million. Who's this guy? Hi.
Little lady.
Good to see you. How are you? Nice to, what's your name?
Smile for the camera.
Huh? Brittany, good to see you. Hi. Nice to see you. Thanks for being here. How long do you have to wait?
Not too long.
Good. I hope not. Good to see you all.
My daughter was one of your pages last year.
No kidding. Good to see you. Thanks for being here. Who's this guy?
This is Matthew.
Is that Matthew himself? Good to see
he
you.
has
Thanks
something
for
for
taking
you.
Matthew, what do you got? All right, I'll take it, and I'll give you that as a souvenir. Nice to see you.
4 years ago. Good
Are
for
you?
you.
Oh, thank you. Well, thanks for being here. You all live in Exeter or nearby?
Rochester.
Rochester? Great. Good to see you. Thank you, sir.
Barber said hello to Jim Pierce. I went to school with him.
You know he had his leg amputated.
Oh, no, I didn't know
Yeah, just this last week.
Oh, my God, I'm sorry to hear
Yeah,
that.
he had some embolism or something.
Oh, gosh. Well, good
Where'd you
luck.
go, to Bowdoin?
Yes.
Yeah. Hi.
Pleasure to meet you.
Good to see
Thank
you.
you very much.
Thanks for taking the time. Nice to see you.
Good to meet you.
Glad
no
to see you.
compromises. Come back to the people and ask them to give Congress help.
That's what we'll do. That's what we got to do. Thanks a lot.
Good luck, Mr.
Goodness, thank you for taking the time.
How you feeling?
I'm
Better?
feeling. Oh yeah, it's 24 hours.
Good.
I had it like a federal case.
I was sick for 2.5 weeks.
With the flu?
Yeah.
Well, I was lucky. Only 24 hours. Hi.
President.
Good to see you. Thanks for taking the time.
Did you sign the budget agreement with Congress again?
Not the tax part, but I like the. I don't want to bust it. I don't want to break the spending caps. I think that is very, very important discipline. And some want us to ditch it. I just. It's the only thing that controls discretionary spending. But like Reagan, you know, I mean, I was there when he had to swallow that.
Thank you very much.
Great.
It's a pleasure. Give our love to Barbara.
Good to
She's
see
great.
you. Thanks.
Very much. Do you
Thanks for being here.
sending troops back to Saddam Hussein?
Do we have to? No.
Anticipate doing
No, I do not. I do not. I think we did what we set out to do. I'm sorry he's still there, but I think the resolution to get the bully out of where he was. The other.
Thank you.
I hope not. How you going? Thanks a lot.
I follow you everywhere.
Thanks for being here. You from Exeter? Where are you from?
I am from Exeter.
Good to see you. Glad to see you.
Good luck.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for taking the time. PEA man?
Yeah.
Are you good?
My grandfather's Jack Abernathy.
No kidding. Glad to see you. Thanks for taking the time to come.
Hi, Mr.
Hi.
President.
How you going?
Good.
Good.
You know what bothers me is everyone's collecting unemployment,
Yeah?
and they're working other jobs. I think there's got to be something done about
You
that.
think there are work out there?
Well, there's people that are working under the table,
Yeah.
but yet they're
Oh,
collecting
they're
this
collecting
unemployment.
illegally.
Right. There's a lot of that going on.
Well, they should not be doing that because that
You
ends
know?
up people
That's
working
that's
guys
what's-
like you paying for it.
Right. That's what's hurting the country.
Yeah, I didn't realize that.
Hi, Mr. President.
How are
I
you?
admire your wife very much.
Isn't she doing well? I'm so proud of her.
Hi, how are you?
Thanks for
Put
taking
your
the
sign is for
time.
my 14-year-old young Republican.
I certainly will.
Thank you very much.
Not at all. Nice to see you. Thanks for taking the time.
Just, you know, that last guy was talking about people abusing the system.
Yeah.
Wow.
Is that right?
Welfare so much, but the unemployment.
Yeah.
Isn't there any way that we can solve that problem?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's strictly against the law. It's a law enforcement. I didn't realize so much. Is there really a lot of it going on?
Well, we're small independent businessmen. A lot
Yeah.
of people come to us and ask us if we'll pay them, you know, under the table.
Oh, for heaven's
I
sake.
mean, we meet a lot of people like that.
And yet your competition does it.
Well,
let me check on you. Absolutely. There ought to be a way to it.
a lot of
I'll
Keep it moving.
just ends up you and I pay for it, so. Hi, nice to see you. Glad to see you. Thanks.
And my member sponsor.
Oh, so I'll tell her.
Mr. President,
Good
I
to see
am
you,
chairman of the Board of Selectmen here in Exeter, and I'd like to ask you one question.
Yeah.
Who's going to win the Super Bowl?
Washington.
Thank you, sir.
Good to see you. Thanks for taking the time. Nice to see you, ma'am. Good to see you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for taking the time to come by.
Welcome to New Hampshire.
Thank
Good
you,
luck.
sir. You from Exeter?
Sure am.
Yep. Good to see you. Hi,
Please
glad to be
avoid
here.
the quick fix.
We got it. We got it.
That's right. That's right.
The political debate's pushing it that way, but I think we'll have good investment, saving, investment, growth initiatives.
Long-term stability. Thank you, sir.
I'm very best.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you. Nice to see you. Thanks.
Hope you're
Nick.
feeling better.
I feel good.
You look great.
24 hours. I mean, that was it.
Hi.
Hi.
Nice
Good
to
to
meet
see
you.
you.
Nice meeting you.
How about a
How you
tax
going?
cut for the middle class? If not that, a tax increase for the rich.
Well,
All right?
I don't want to raise taxes. I'm against that. So we'll see what we can do. Hi. Nice to see you. Good to see you. Thanks for taking the time. How you doing?
Very glad
Good
to have
see
you
you. Glad to be back. How are you going? Thanks for taking the time. Good to see you. Thanks for your question. Yeah.
Him on the bigger issues of health care. The country trusts
Oh, I see.
him.
I thought we were talking about that one, but no, they do trust him. He's a good man.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to see you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to see you. How you going? Thank you,
Give us
sir.
a dream, give us a project.
That's
and
it.
Send John back up for a little while.
He's doing good. I mean, I'm very grateful to him.
President,
Good to see you. Thanks a lot. The other way. Thank you. I'm so sorry. She's busy. Still got a little lag and has a project down there. She'll be back, though, on her own, too. Good to see you. Hi. Nice to see you. Thanks
Wow,
a
what a
lot.
pleasure.
Thanks for being here.
Nice to see
Nice
you. Good
to
luck.
see you. Good luck.
Such an
Thank
honor
you.
to meet you.
Thanks for being here. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Emphasis next 4 years on home front, right?
That's got it. That's got it. Good.
Mr. President, I vote in Massachusetts, and I'm
Do you?
behind you 100%.
Thanks for coming over. Appreciate it. Whereabouts down here? Good
Pleasure to meet you.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you,
Good to
President.
see you. You got it. Beautiful. You get it?
Nice to meet you. Can I
Nice
have
to
a
see
picture
you.
taken?
Yeah, sure. You got
Nice
it.
to meet you.
Good.
Nice to meet you, Mr.
Nice to
President.
see
Can I
you.
get you to sign this?
You can, but let me do you something better. Sign it on a plane.
Great, thanks.
Nice to see you. Good to see you. Thank you for taking the. There it is.
Well, you got it out there.
You got it. That's it. Well, I just signed it. Just saved a
remember
little
to
time.
post when they will ship you out next year when it's cut time.
All right.
Again, keep
good
up
to
the good
see you.
work.
Thanks. Nice to see you. Thanks for taking the time to come by. Appreciate it. Good to see you. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thanks for taking the time to come over.
Welcome, Mr. President.
Got it?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Good luck, sir.
You from Exeter?
Yes, sir, I am.
Great. Hi. Nice to see you. How you going?
Nice to meet you.
Thanks for coming over. Nice. You asked a question.
Yes,
Good
I
for
thought
you.
I'd add that I would like to see the schools, the kids to be supportive of one another instead of being
Yeah.
set up to compete with one another.
Oh,
A
gosh,
support
yeah.
system really needs to be put in.
But you're right on this. Now, you asked about the narcotics thing.
Yes.
We got to get you some. I don't know how to do it because I think you'd be interested in that. You know, it's a little hopeful there. Good point.
Thanks. Bye.
Nice to see you. Thanks for coming by. Good to see you, sir.
Left-handed, got to be that
Left-handed,
good.
upside down. You an
Thank you,
Exeter
sir.
guy? Good to see you. Hi.
I think it's important that you touch on the banking issue while you're here. As a banker, it's something that's really important, and the banking reform acts really need to be touched on.
We've got to get it in. We had a little opportunity to talk about it over at Peace, and we landed with some businessmen and women, but we're gonna go back with the reform legislation. We didn't get it, and it's very important, I think.
Need some work. As a banker, I'd like to see that happen.
We'll push for it. Where are you in the
Thank
banking business? Right here?
Right down the road.
Yeah.
First savings.
Hi.
I like your ideas on the family, too.
Really? Good to see you. We got to do that.
Thank you.
Good luck,
Nice
sir.
to thank you, sir, taking the time.
You look great.
I feel good. That was just a quick 24-hour.
You look good.
It sounded worse.
Thank you, Mr. President. My students say hello.
Now, where do you teach?
In Timberland, we won a Presidential Award of Excellence a couple of years
Good
ago.
for you. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. Thanks.
John Prince.
Hi, John. Good. How's it going in the academy? All
It's
right.
going really well.
Andover still beating the hell out of you?
Yes.
Oh, come on. Are they? We never did. Once in a while we did.
Well, just
Candy
football.
Jones.
but-
Thank you for taking the time.
All right.
Nice to see you.
Nice to meet you.
Hi.
Nice to meet you,
sir.
President
Nice
Dennis
to see you.
Barbado. Get us
Glad to
aboard.
see you. Thanks. Good to see you. Thanks for coming by.
Nice to shake your hand.
Nice to see
you
you,
had a
sir.
picture with our son when you came last time when he was a baby.
Oh,
He's
come
waiting
on.
in the backdrop.
Here?
Yeah, he was waiting in the backdrop for another one.
Where's the
Maureen.
guy now?
He's behind you.
We'll get him over there. Hi.
I'm so
Good
thrilled to see you. I can't speak. Where's Barbara?
Barbara's minding the home front today. She's coming back up, though.
Oh, good.
She'll be back 2 or 3 times. Good to see you, sir. Hi. Nice to see you. Thanks for taking the time. Thank you, sir. Thanks for taking the time to come. Well, we need you. We need you. Thanks. Good to see you. Thanks a lot. Good morning, and thanks for coming by.
Absolutely.
Appreciate
Nice
it.
to see you.
Nice to meet the
President. Be bold and State of the Union.
We're going to have a good one. Yeah, but it's going to avoid the quick fix. Well, I know it. You got to get this Congress to say, all right, let's pass this, and then let's do our politics. I mean, the country needs it. All right.
Coming, sir.
Good to see you.
Autograph?
You got it. Turn it over.
The only more photographers come in from that side.
These belt tips are a lot easier. You got it. Nice to see you. Good morning. Nice to see you, sir.
How are the Redskins going to do?
Well, I think all right. As an Oiler fan, I can now be objective, but they're tough. They are tough.
Oh, yeah.
They're tough. Good to see you.
We love Barbara.
Well, didn't she doing well? I'm so proud of her.
New Hampshire. I had a
Good to see
question
you.
for you, sir.
Yeah.
I'm an employee of the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. And, we get 4,000 New Hampshire voters.
Yeah, I
we
know
hope that when you, Mr. Cheney, look at the budget, you take a long, hard
Let's
look at
see what we
Portsmouth
can do.
versus Portsmouth, peas. The economy is tough here.
We got to get
need
that
those
Peace
jobs,
economic program
Yes,
going,
sir.
too.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming over. Hi, how are you? Good to see you. Thank you, sir, for being with us. No problem. Nice to see you. Sure. Absolutely. How long did you have to wait for this thing here? Hour? You're nice to see you.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Mr. Bush, does your proposal for economic recovery contain any business tax incentives?
Yes.
For the sake of stimulating employment capital expenditure?
It is, and including capital gains, which I still feel is good, and we've proposed it twice, and I'm going to keep going back. I noticed some of the Democrats are supporting that, too. But it'll have more than that, but yes, it will.
Okay.
In fact, I think the whole thing has got to be oriented that way. I think you'll see it. You look in the State of the Union.
Okay, great.
I
Thanks.
think you'll like it.
See that button? That's 4 years
goes way-
ago.
Was it 4 or 8?
Well, whatever.
Good to see you. Good
But
to
we're
see you.
still with you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Well,
Seabrook.
I'm working hard.
We
That's
carried-
working out all right, isn't it?
Yeah, sure.
Good.
We
Good to see
carried
you.
Seabrook for you before, and we
Do it
will
one
again.
more time. One more time. Good to see you. Thanks for being with us and taking the time.
Hey, I got a question
Good to
for you.
see you.
Quick one. What can I say to people like guys at work when they say, well, let's not vote for Bush because it's his fault for the economy? And how can I help to put him back on, wait a minute, it's Congress?
Well, that's it. I'll have to help you do that. It happens to be true. But tell him, look, I heard a guy. I know he cares about this. He's made proposals that will get the economy moving. Now we need your help to get him through the Congress. I mean, that's the approach, and I'll be helping with that at the State of the Union.
Okay.
But thanks very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Good to see you. Thank you. Good to see you.
Maureen's sister. This is
Well,
our
listen,
second time. Third time.
Great. Hadn't changed a bit.
You're going to take worker.
Oh, that's great. Don't let her kill you.
I'm Maureen's nephew.
Thanks for being here. Hi. Nice to see you. Good luck to you. Here we go.
Hi,
Good to see you. Thanks for taking the time to come. Appreciate it. Come on, you guys.
I'm waiting all this
All right.
time.
Good to see you. Thanks for being here. You got it.
Yeah.
Good to see you. Hi.
How are
See you just fine. Click. We got it. How about your photographer? You bring your own photographer, huh?
thanks.
Nice to meet you.
Want to price your town chairman candy? Could I possibly
Come
get
on,
your
let me
name
do
on
it.
this?
Yeah, absolutely. How about right on there?
Right there, anyway you
This
can do
felt
it.
tip works good.
Yeah.
And thanks for doing
Yeah,
it.
thanks
Very
a lot.
We'll win it.
Yeah,
Thanks.
you
We
bet.
need it.
Yeah.
Bush, can you send them?
Yeah. There we go. Good to see you guys. One more? Don't tell anyone. All right. Good to see you. Come on, you guys. You're going to get me in trouble. You got it. Nice
Great
to see you.
job.
Oh, thanks. Well, we'll keep slugging. We need your help.
Mr. President?
Yeah, come on. Here we are.
Oh, my favorite president.
Got it?
You don't mess it up, please.
We'll send it to you anyway. This is a reserve photography.
Oh, thank you very much.
Nice to see you. Good to see you. Oh, it's slugging. We need your help, though. Good to see you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Nice to see you. Thanks for taking a look at this. I love it. This is clever. Good to see you. Hi. Nice
How you doing? Nice to
Good.
see you.
How you going? Thanks for taking the time to come by. Appreciate it. Good to see you.
I'm so pleased to meet you, President.
Nice to see you, and
Good
thank
luck
you
in
all.
the election.
Now help me win this thing.
I will.
All right.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Glad to see you. Thank you.
Mr. President, nice to see you again. That was our daughter that asked about the drugs.
It was a good question. She also had a facet I might not have addressed myself to on the education part of it. I had a little chance to visit with her.
Well, we feel very close to you.
really
There's
good.
also another daughter that was president of the Exeter High School class that invited you to speak when you were vice president.
Yeah, I remember the
So-
event. Good to see you. I did it, though,
Okay.
the one when I was
Of course,
here.
I enjoyed
yeah,
it.
yeah, exactly.
Nice to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for taking the time.
I'm with you, sir.
Oh, we need you. Thanks a lot.
Hi, Joy.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming by.
out to lunch, will you?
No, I'd like you to do that and straighten them out. Nice to see you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Nice to see you, sir. Well, I feel welcome. I'm just glad to be back. Good to see you.
Hi, I'm
Hi.
Ellen Condix. I'm
Hello,
on
Ellen.
the Board of Selectmen. I've met you a half a dozen times.
Here?
Sure,
Glad to
with
see you, Ellen.
Maureen. And I wrote to Judd and said anything I can do to support you, I will.
We appreciate
But I
it
also
very
want
much.
you to do another thing.
Yeah.
I want you to talk to some of the lower level people in the real world to find out where the inequities are in federal government from the top
Down.
to come down.
I got good point.
Absolutely.
Some of that's regulation.
Yes,
Good.
call
Hi.
me. Good to see you again.
Nice
It's
to
a
see
privilege
you.
to know
Thanks for coming.
I'm with the adult education.
Well, that is so, and Barbara's trying to help you all on that, too.
Shaking hand. I'm an unemployed worker for the first time in my life, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful that you signed the extension on the
Well, we did
unemployment.
that, but we got to get going on and get this damn economy.
I know.
So that'll turn. It'll turn.
Okay,
Thanks for
thanks.
being here. What's the matter with this guy?
He doesn't want to see President Biden.
Yeah, I know. He doesn't. Hi, nice to see you.
Mr. President, very pleased to meet you. I hope your visit to New Hampshire and your campaign helps our country.
I think it'll help. I think it'll help. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Good luck, President.
How are you?
Nice
Good
to see you.
you.
Relatives of John Hathaway from Alabama.
Hey, listen, he's
All
a
right?
good man. I saw him the other day.
He said
You saw yesterday morning. Yesterday, yeah.
All right,
He was
good.
up there.
Good luck to you.
What is
Good
it?
luck.
Wild Boys. Wild Boys Cattle Company. Good to see you.
How are you,
Nice
Mr.
to see
President?
you. I'm fine. Thank you for taking the time. Hi, nice to see you. Well, thank you. I need your help.
This is such an honor.
Well,
Yeah, a
the
lot of
other way,
people
I'm
still
glad to be back
We have a
here.
lot of supporters here.
Well, that's a good to
Pleasure
hear.
to see you.
Good to
Thank
hear.
you.
Nice to see you. Thanks for taking the time. Nice to see you, sir. Thanks. Well, we'll give it to them. We're going to go after it and try to say, hey, look, we need to pass this thing. So then the people got to weigh in. Nice to see you.
It's nice to meet you.
Nice
You're
to
doing
see
a good
you.
job.
Thanks a million.
I'm Wheats and Press following you.
Well, glad you're here.
Thank you.
Hi. Nice to see you.
I'm self-employed, and I'm scared the economy won't make it in time.
It'll make it.
I'm in construction. I hope so.
Well, what we're trying to do is get the incentives in there. So maybe what we propose
I'll be
will get
listening
passed
to you.
this time. Yeah. Good luck to you.
Nice to
Hi.
see you.
Nice to see you. Thanks for taking the time. What are you with? Good to see you.
NYNEX, best company in the world.
All right.
Mr. President, nice to meet you.
Good to see you. Thanks
Good
for
luck.
coming by. Nice to see you guys. Thanks a lot.
Nice to meet you, Mr. President. Keep up the good work.
You're colder than that Dickens.
You bet.
Nice to see you. Thanks.
Can I have a signature from my
She's in
little
D.C.
brother?
Yes, you certainly may.
Thank you. She's right
You
over
got
here.
it. What happened to your thumb?
Tendinitis.
Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Thank you for coming today. Appreciate it. Nice to see you, sir.
Peace Air Force Base. Appreciate your help. You could help
Well,
some things going on development there.
Yeah.
That'll have more value to the people here than any other program.
Yes,
you've
it's
come
a
up
wonderful idea that they're working on. And I told them up there I want to help them. I think we can, too.
Soon.
Yeah, economic development.
President, again, pleasure to see you. If you don't mind.
See you. Not at all. Glad to
I'll see you in Boston sometime, I hope.
All right, nice to see you. Thank you for taking the time.
in healthcare.
Well, we do. I thought, listen to our proposal. I hope it proves to be a good one for the American.
Lots of problems.
Yeah. How are you? Good to see you. How you doing?
Would you mind signing for the front and in the back? There's a page on the back. And a good friend of yours and mine says hello, John Hathaway from Alabama.
Well, why do you all? So somebody else went through and said they knew. I saw him yesterday.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
He used to be up around here, didn't he?
Well, he's from Maine, Garden,
Yeah,
Maine.
Maine, yeah.
He's got land in
Thank you,
Buckport now.
I know he does. Nice
President
to
Bush,
see
you're doing a wonderful job. May
Oh,
I
slugging it
please
out.
ask
Thank
for-
you so much. Certainly may.
Thank you very
Nice
much.
thing about a short name.
Thank you.
President, you're wonderful.
Good to see you.
Good
Thank
luck
you,
and God
sir.
bless you.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you.
Get some rest.
I feel rested. I'll tell you, still a little jet lag.
Can you sign this to John?
Can I just put my name in there?
Yep.
Okay. Just because the other guys are waiting, you know what I mean? Thank you.
He's got a hole in one. He's a great golfer.
Hole in one? I hope they brought you free meal and everything. Hole in one, really? Fantastic. Wait a minute. See, wait, Bill. Bill? Where's Parrish? You got a golf ball by any chance? Here, go with him. I'm going to give you a special golf ball for getting a hole in one. Hi, nice to see you. Good to see you.
This is Catherine.
I saw Catherine. You were over there, weren't you? And I met you when you were little.
That's right.
Can you remember? Need your help. Nice to see you. I got it. You got it.
Oh, why didn't I bring a piece of paper? What are
Souvenir things. Nice to see you. Thank you for taking the time. Good to see you. Thanks for coming by.
You signed this for the students at Phillips Exeter Academy.
You teach over here?
I supervise the student center.
Do
Right.
you?
Yes,
How they treating you? All right?
They're all right, fine.
They don't have the same kind of quality Andover guys do, do they?
Oh, better.
Get out of here.
No, I want to say one quick thing. My son's in construction. He's had to lay off 10 people.
Oh, we got it.
And they can't get loans other at banks at 12%. They can only get 18, 19%, and their business is going right down
Even
the
though
tubes.
these rates are coming down? Yeah.
Right. Well, it's because the banks won't loan because of the S&L scandal. And
I know.
we've got to do something about
We
it.
had a long talk about that, about the regulation today. I hope we can help on it. Yeah, nice to see you. Thanks for coming by. Thank you for your question.
Thank you for
I appreciate it. It's not easy to do that. I appreciate you just calling it out. I wasn't trying to be wise, but I just think sometimes when a deal like this, people might have a difference, feel a little inhibited, but I appreciate it. But we do have a pretty good approach on this.
I hope so. I hope so.
It's good to see you. Thanks a lot.
Could you sign this for me?
I certainly will. You got it. Nice to see you, sir. Thanks for coming by.
We came down from Dartmouth College to support
Did
you here.
you?
Yes, we did.
Hanover
I
forever.
know. Okay.
When do I get back up there? Should I go there or not?
I
Hi,
hope
good to
so.
see
We're
you.
trying to work it out for
Are
you.
you? Thanks. Good. Thanks for being here.
Bless you.
Good to see you.
Your Christian family values.
Well,
really
thank you.
appreciate that.
Well, we're trying.
Lead
on
some
that.
more from your heart.
The more you get in this job, the idea of faith, personal, is important. It really is. Other presidents have felt that way, and that I understand it.
Thank you.
Particularly at the time of the war, I felt it.
Hi, God bless you.
Thanks
Keep
a
up the good
lot.
work.
Nice to see you.
Glad to see you.
Nice to see you. Thanks for coming by.
You've done a wonderful job.
Well, we got to keep slugging.
Next time you
Good
go
to see
shopping,
you.
go to Walmart.
Okay, all right. Hi, good to see you. How are you? Thanks for being here.
Pleasure meeting you.
Thank you, sir.
You look great, Mr. President.
Good to see you. Well, I'm feeling all right.
I'm the high school principal.
Are you? I was at your graduation. You're darn right. Tell me that these people that say Bush doesn't know where New Hampshire is, tell them I was at this graduation.
Absolutely.
You're
Look,
darn
we
right.
expect your support for the Soviet. We have a Soviet-American exchange.
Yeah.
This is
That'll
our
go
fourth
for
year.
us.
Can we keep going back?
Is it federally done?
Yes.
Well, yeah,
USA.
there won't be cut out. Yeah.
Thanks.
Good. No, I think it's more important than ever.
Yes, thank you.
Our family believes in you. We realize and understand you're one man.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Welcome. I am
Nice to
Exodus
see you.
Town Clerk. I'm
Are
very
you?
happy. Yes,
Elected?
Yes, elected. I
Great.
know what
Nice
you're
to be
going
back.
President.
Thanks for letting us use the town hall. Good to see you, sir. You all right?
Thanks
Hi.
for coming. Regards to Barbara.
I'll tell Barbara she's doing great.
Thanks
Good to
for coming
see you,
by.
sir. The other way. Thanks for taking the time on a busy day.
It's an honor to
Nice
meet
to see you. Thank you for being here.
trouble you for a quick one?
You sure may. Yes, sir. You right here?
Appreciate it.
Got it.
Good luck.
Thanks a lot. Come on, leave it. These little felt tips work pretty good. Nice to see you. Thanks for coming.
Please, my son's home with the flu, and I'm sure you
Oh,
understand
God.
that.
Would he like me to go home and lecture him on how not to do it when you get the flu? I'd be glad to. Hi. There you go. Good to see you.
God bless.
Thank you. Thank you. We believe in that. Thank you, sir. Good to see you. Sure enough. Sure enough. Exeter High School. Good to see you. Sir,
President
thanks.
John Sarvey.
Hello, John. Thanks for coming by. I appreciate it,
Shot
sir.
lots of ducks off Walker Point in the old days.
Oh, really? Is that right? You know that pier out there?
Yeah.
Off our house got clobbered. The whole middle of it came
Went right
down in
in?
that storm, yeah. And it's
Too bad.
expensive to put it back up.
Hi, Mr. President.
Hi, how are you?
It's nice to meet you.
Who you got there?
This is Emily.
Emily.
Yes,
You
12
bet.
weeks.
She must have been very interested in what I had to say. Yeah. Good to see you. Glad to. Thanks for taking the time.
Hi, three
Nice-
things.
Yeah.
Remember us.
Yeah.
Say hi to Barbara.
right.
Say hi to Bill. Because we have a Tilly.
How about my dog, Ranger? Come on. Nice to see you. Thanks for taking the time, sir.
from Salem, New Hampshire.
Are you
remember
from Salem? Oh,
Remember us
golly.
with Vesta Roy?
Oh,
And there were
yeah.
just about
Vesta's
four of
left,
us?
though. Vesta's
Yes,
left.
yes, she is.
You talk about the early days.
Oh, boy.
Now,
Way
you're my witness to go out and say he knows we're New Hampshire.
Absolutely. Say hello
How
to
you
Barbara.
doing? Do you ever hear from Vesta?
Yes, often.
Is she not in politics down there, is
No, she isn't. I wish she was.
she? Yeah. Did her husband die, the doctor?
No.
Good.
They're well.
Don't tell him I asked them. Hi. Good
Think
to
we could
see you.
loosen up some IRA money?
Yeah, we're going to have another, we've been proposing it. This
I know you
new
have,
thing's
but
good.
the economists are kind of putting a lid on it, aren't they?
I think
only
we'll have something there.
25%,
I
maybe
think we'll have
25%.
something there. We'll have something to
Put a
think
percentage
about.
on it.
All right. Thanks for taking the time. Thank you, ma'am. Good to see you. Aren't you nice to be here? Thank you.
Good luck.
Good to see you, sir. Thanks for coming. My gosh.
Doing a great job, Mr. President. And it's
Oh,
only
boyfriend, isn't it?
My old
and it's
and my
only the
new.
fourth inning.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Good way to look at it. Hey, you going, big guy? Nice
Don't
to
you
see
believe the polls?
Yeah.
We hope you come back and visit us after re-election.
That's it. I will. I will. I got a little investment down the road, as you know.
Mike
Good to see you, sir.
D'Agostino, chauffeur.
Are you?
I meet you at Pease.
D'Agostino, I'm worried about him. He's
He's
losing
all right.
weight.
No.
He's told him that. Actually, he does look like he's lost a little. Good to see you. Got it?
John Hathaway was my son's Exeter roommate. So,
Did John go to Phillips?
yes, sure he did. He roomed with Jimmy Tubbs.
I was with him yesterday. Yeah. Hi. Nice to see you. Good to see you. Isn't he a marvelous guy? Look at him.
I wait on him every
Tell
Wednesday
Mike I
and
got to get him
Saturday
over for a picture.
Well,
He
tell
can't
him.
escape. Mike, get over here. Good to see you. I got to get D'Agostino back too. Oh, look at. Here we go. Come on. Here we go. All right. Now here's our leader. Everybody do what she says. Get out here.
President?
All right.
Okay, we have another photo here. Group number 2.
Put him up here. Get Mike. I want a picture of it.
Group number 2 right here.
Group number 2. Wait a minute. I'm not sure I want my picture taken with the group like that. Here we go. Here we go.
That's holy power.
You see? No choices.
All right.
Over here.
Here we are. Smile.
Right
Keep
here.
on pushing.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Got a pretty high-powered photographer here.
And then we got group number 3.
Come on,
Diane,
Mike.
here they are.
Congratulations, group number 3.
Group number 3.
Hi.
Here we go.
Yeah, let me pick
What's this guy?
This is Andrew. No, he's heavy.
Okay. Here, come on this side. And what's this guy's name?
Look up the picture right here.
Tip.
Cheese.
Keys. We got it.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you.
Doing a great job.
Come on, Mike. Old time's sake. We only have 2,000 of these. Sure. How you going?
The more the
I think you got half this crowd of your relatives. You got there.
You're my friend.
I know it, pal. Good to see you. Good to see you. How you feeling?
Good.
Helen, did you have your picture taken going through the line?
All right.
Got to get Mrs. Bush to speak down here.
She won't. She's been here. She's coming back. You mean in Exeter? Come on. I know it. I know it.
I told him, he said, I want to have a long time.
You got it?
Thank you very much.
All right, sir. She's fantastic.
You're so nice.
Okay. That was a good event. You did a wonderful job.
Carry him out of here now. I'm sorry.
Good job, as always.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
I got a wonderful collection of photos.
What do you think of the response so far?
I'm pleased so far.
Pleased so far?
People are hurting, but I think there's good support, and I think that's what a lot of people around here are telling me, so it feels good. But
Taking a lot of time to talk to people. Is that?
sounds like as they go through, you try to say what's on your mind and solicit questions from those. But this idea that I think they know that I understand this state, understand the problem, care about it, and I think a lot of it's that.
How do you feel?
Well, I feel pretty darn encouraged after the last 2 stops.
Sir, you're not dismayed by the polls?
You're watching Road to the White House, C-SPAN's weekly look at the 1992 presidential campaign. Stay with us through Election Day, your primary source for election coverage. Here's a look ahead at the upcoming campaign schedule, beginning with next month's Iowa caucus. These are just some key dates on the campaign calendar in the months ahead. Coming up next, we turn our attention to Republican presidential candidate Pat Buchanan. The former syndicated columnist and television commentator spoke to the members of the Manchester, New Hampshire Rotary Club this past Thursday in response to the president's visit. After delivering brief remarks, he then took a few questions from Rotary members. This meeting was the club's regularly scheduled Thursday morning session held at a local restaurant in downtown Manchester.
They gave me an official introduction here, but everyone knows me, knows I don't do too many things officially. It's a great pleasure to have with us Pat Buchanan running for president. I know him most from Crossfire and the Capital Gang, and in one hand I don't want him to win the presidency because I'd hate to miss him on that show. I couldn't stand Kinsley and Novak all the time. But on the other hand, we'd like to give a good Queen City Rotary welcome to Pat Buchanan running for president of the United States.
Thanks very much. Good to see you. Appreciate it very much. You mentioned gambling. Let me tell you about making a big gamble, my friend. I guess we had a visitor up here in New Hampshire yesterday for the first time in a long time, my good friend George Herbert Walker Bush. I noticed something new, though, when he came in on that television screen. I noticed they've started to put bomb racks on Air Force One when they're coming into New Hampshire. Let me talk about the president and his visit up here very briefly, and since I want to save a bit of my voice for a speech I've got to give to the AARP, we'll go to Q&A after I make a few comments. There's my old friend David Broder. David, how are you? Good to see you. Washington Post is here. Let me talk a bit about the president and what he did when he came up here. He came up here for about the first time in a very, very long time. He hasn't visited here, and you've been hurting for about 3 years. And the first thing he did when he came up here, Mr. Bush did, he said he will not take the pledge of no new taxes. He will not take the pledge he took in 1988. He won't take the pledge that won him the New Hampshire primary when Bob Dole refused to take the pledge in 1988 after Dole had won the Iowa caucuses. Now, what's the meaning of that statement? Well, maybe Mr. Bush won't sign the pledge statement that I put out, but he really ought to make a commitment about no new taxes, because that is at the core of the Republican Party philosophy. That is at the core of what carried us to victory in the 1980s and is at the core of what we believe as Republicans and conservatives. And if Mr. Bush will not take the pledge, is he telling us that he is willing to raise taxes again if necessary? And if he's not going to raise them again, why can't he tell us? Mr. Bush said, again, the union leader, asked if he would promise to oppose and veto tax hike legislation in the future. Mr. Bush said, quote, if the voters give me a Republican Congress, there won't be any taxes of any kind, direct or indirect, that need to be raised. Now, this goes to the heart of my quarrel with the president. Mr. Bush will not fight the Democratic Congress. He says he needs a Republican Congress, or maybe he's going to have to accept new taxes. Now, there is no way A tax hike can be imposed on the American people without the approval of George Herbert Walker Bush. If he had opposed those taxes in 1990, they would not have been raised. So let me go briefly to what this campaign is all about. It is about the heart and soul of the Republican Party and the future of that political party. What do we as Republicans, as conservative Republicans, really stand for now? If you vote for me, I think you know what you get. Conservative in the Goldwater, Reagan tradition. When it comes to Washington and government, I believe in smaller government, lower taxes, less spending, and balanced budgets. Mr. Bush has gone to Washington and become a big government, big spending Republican. Under his administration, spending in Washington has risen to the highest levels in history, social spending. Taxes are at the highest level in history, 25% of GNP. And we have run the two largest budget deficits in history. If you want big government republicanism, if you want what you've had the last 3 years, then vote for George Bush. But if you believe in the philosophy of conservative, with a small c, government, vote for Pat Buchanan. In foreign policy, Mr. Bush is a globalist, and he's quite proud of it. Under him, foreign aid has been maintained at near record levels. $300 million a week in foreign aid go out of this country to socialist and third world regimes, not one of which has gotten off Uncle Sam's welfare rolls in 20 years. I used to support almost all of that foreign aid during the Cold War with the Soviet Union. But the Cold War is ending if it is not over. And we need to take a look at the institutions we built to fight the Cold War and the policies we maintain to fight it. I agreed with the conservatives and Republicans, Mr. Nixon through Mr. Reagan, in opposing withdrawal of American troops from Europe as long as there were 20 Red divisions right across the line in Germany. But the Red Army is going home from Berlin, from Germany, from Hungary, from Czechoslovakia, from Poland, from Ukraine, from the Baltic republics. And if it does go home, why then do we need 250,000 troops in Bavaria? Mr. Bush, as I said, is a globalist. He believes in the institutions of a new world order, and I will put America first. Finally, there are differences in style between us, and I think this is critical. Mr. Bush has criticized the Congress, but when push comes to shove, he collaborates with the Congress. He collaborated on higher taxes. He cut a deal with Congress on racial quotas when he said he wouldn't do that. And he collaborated with Congress on a pay raise, 40 to 50% pay raise for the Congress of the United States. He is a man of government, and I am a man of the private sector. In style, he will cooperate, as he calls it, compromise, work with a liberal Democratic Congress, and to me, you will never get spending down, and you will never get taxes down, and you will never get even toward a balanced budget if you are unwilling to fight. U.S. Grant said, or rather Mr. Lincoln said, when General Grant was criticized and they asked him to replace him, he said, "I can't spare this man, he fights." Unless we have a leader in Washington who represents the principles of the Republican Party, conservatism, and not only represents them, but fights the Congress for them virtually every day of his administration, you will lose. We will lose slowly, but we will lose and lose and lose. And it is because we have been losing those battles that we have situations such as we have today in New Hampshire. I mean, really, are you better off now than you were 3 years ago? Are these policies working? Should they be pursued for the next 3 years? If you say yes, you know who your choice is. But if you say no, if you believe George Bush has broken faith with the Republican principles and has broken his promise to us and to the party, then I don't think you can re-honor him with your nomination. Because what then do we as a party stand for? If we won't fight for our own principles and beliefs, if we'll choose the man who's got the best shot at winning regardless, then what does our party stand for? Are we really that different from those we oppose? So that's basically my view of Mr. Bush's visit yesterday and of what this campaign is all about. And I'd be happy to entertain questions if somebody would get me a glass of water. Thank you very much.
Pat?
Yes, sir.
What is your view on the proposed trade agreement between Canada, Mexico, and the U.S.?
The Mexican Free Trade Agreement, I would put it on hold. It is on hold, as a matter of fact. And the reason I would is this. Before the United States can open up totally, I think, to Mexico, we have got to improve the conditions for small business in the United States. Small business in this country has been hammered 4 or 5 times in the last 3 years. The rise in the minimum wage, you got the Clean Air Act amendments, you got the Disability Act, you got the $165 billion in new taxes, and you got the quota bill. All these things were piled on top of small business in the United States in the last 3 years and made our small businesses less competitive than ever compared to a much more open and freer market. I think now, the free trade agreement, if it went through now, given the condition of a lot of American businesses, I think they would pick up and move south and take the jobs with them. They would go down there because they don't have OSHA, they don't have EPA, they don't have union wages, they don't have minimum wages, they don't have environmental standards. They would escape all the onerous regulations, rules, and taxes we're imposing on our own people. So what I would do is, before we move to a free trade agreement with Mexico, and I'm not opposed to the idea in principle, we have got to make our own economic climate and environment much more attractive for investment, because we've got to start creating jobs right here in the United States of America. Yes, sir.
Can you tell us if you have any examples of how you plan to do that? What type of incentives you plan to input for growth in our own country? And how you plan to fund it?
First, you got a $400 billion deficit now. I think that'll be out when the figures come out in January. We got that when we were promised a cut in the deficit with those new taxes. That backfired. New taxes sent the economy down the tubes and increased the deficit. Even Mr. Bush is admitting as much yesterday. The first thing you've got to do, you've got to separate the deficit from the economic situation. I would go for tax cuts much broader than Mr. Bush is now beginning to recommend, and deeper. Investment tax credit, a middle-class tax cut, and a capital gains tax cut. I would try for everything I could get from Congress there. You will get something. That would give you, I think, ignition in the economy. Once the economy starts moving up and people start going back to work, I think revenues will start to rise. But then you've got to go look at the spending side. We are spending too much. We not only need to freeze, we need to start cutting in agencies and maybe even cutting out agencies. Now, I know I am called an isolationist, but look, we expanded, if I recall correctly, the USIA by about 50% in terms of personnel to ideologically fight the Cold War. It was the right thing to do. Do we need all those employees over there still? Take a look at the Arms Control and Disarmament Agency. Take a look at the troops in Europe now. Can the Germans handle the defense of southwestern Germany and Munich? I mean, their tradition is not wholly pacifist. Those are some areas you could work. You got to work on the welfare state. You have to go to work on the welfare state. You ought to take a look at CIA. There are many of these departments and agencies built up during Great Society years that really have not achieved their purposes. Take a look at Jack Kemp's Department of Housing and Urban Development. I think you're going to have to hold down spending and cut spending and unleash the private sector. Now, that's my philosophy. It is, look, that you guys pay the tuition. Business, industry, manufacturing, these are the engines, the locomotives that pull the train. It's not pulled by Washington. Washington is the baggage. And instead of cutting out 74,000 jobs at General Motors, maybe we go over to EPA and cut out 74,000 people in those agencies, guys sitting over there with sandals on, making rules and regs for everybody else. And this is, I think this is the philosophy you've got to take. And to implement it, you got to fight, because that thing has a tendency to grow and grow and grow. Okay? Yes, sir.
Are you for a balanced budget, number one? And number two,
If George Bush and Ronald Reagan couldn't persuade the Congress of the United States to go for a balanced budget, what can you do to offset that?
Listen, in 1985, I mean, they didn't make it, but in 1985 and 1986, when I was in the White House, we took the federal budget deficit, which was at $220 billion, down to $150 billion in 1 year. 1 year, $70 billion cut in the deficit. How did you do it? One, we said we're not going to give you any more money to Congress. And two, we passed Graham-Rudman-Hollings. That bill had a huge axe applied to it, which said if Congress doesn't cut spending, this thing will simply slice it automatically. It was a crude weapon. It should have been tailored differently, but it was something. If Congress didn't cut the budget, the slicer cut it. Mr. Bush, when he cut his budget deal, threw it out the window, and then he raised taxes. And now you've got a $400 billion deficit. Ronald Reagan did a lot. He didn't do as much as he should have. I remember one time they sent down a $600 billion continuing resolution, and it had bells and whistles on it and everything else. It was the entire budget virtually of the United States. And we urged the president to veto it. That would have shut down the government. We would have had emergency crews in all the departments. But we urged the president to veto it, then go out into the press room and say, here's why we're shutting down the government. This is in here, this is in here, this is pork barrel, this is waste. This is the type of thing I've been complaining about. I'm sending this back up to the Hill, and they're going to take it out, or we're going to be here over Christmas until they do. Then you would have said, excuse me, you would have said, now I want to talk to the Social Security recipients. You call Congress today and tell them to take that out of the budget and send it down to me, and I'll sign it tonight, and you won't miss a single check. But if you start missing checks, it's because of them. You put the Congress of the United States, which has brave guys in it, liberals and brave conservatives, but is an institutional coward, you stand up to that institution in a national spotlight and demand things in the name of the American people and call on the American people to back you up, and you will get them. That's when Ronald Reagan succeeded, that is how he succeeded. Yes, sir.
If we eliminated re-election campaigns, in other words, have real strict term limits, do you think it would help the situation? You could get better long-term decisions?
You mean eliminate re-election campaigns?
One term for everybody.
See.
Maybe longer terms, but one term.
My view is, and again, my view here has changed. I used to think that term limits were not a good idea. Now I think they are a necessary idea. You know, if 8 years is good enough for a great president, it's probably good enough for some boodling congressman. Now, let me tell you what convinced me of that. It's the fact, it's one, the fact that 99% of these characters are reelected, and 99% of them aren't the best candidates. But secondly, who are the two national leaders in the fight against the pay raise for Congress, the 50% pay raise? I think I was one of them. Ralph Nader was the other. I was on television, I was on columns, I was in interviews, and Nader was all over the country. Talk show hosts went wild with the issue. We stopped it in 60 days because the whole country rose up against it. And they repealed it. They voted no, not to give themselves a pay raise. And then 8 or 9 months later, when the whole country, 90% was against it, they snuck it through. And they did it because they know the time span, the people's attention is lost. They've got they're not only their PACs, they've got their mailing privileges, they've got their constituent services. Once they get in there, they have structured it so, both parties have, they stay forever. So I would go for 6 years or 8 years for a congressman, 12 years for a senator, and out. Term limits. It'll take a long time to get it, though, because you need a constitutional amendment. Excuse me, one or two more. Yes, sir.
What about the health care area? What are you going to do about the rising cost of health care?
It's a big one. I'm going to talk to the AARP today about it, one thing. There are three plans, basically, or three ideas with regard to health care. One is sort of national health insurance. I think Mr. Harkin is in favor more of that. I am against that. I think it would be an utter disaster to have the federal government take over the entire health care system. I think expenses and costs would explode. It would take up an enormous part of the national wealth, and I think it would be inefficient. And I think eventually it would be like Britain's system and be even insensitive. I know in Britain and Canada, for example, has a national health system. There are something like 100 Canadians have to come to Cleveland's clinic every year to get heart surgery because it's not available in time. So I am not for that one. The other one coming up is the Pay or Play program, which is proposed, I believe, by Senator Mitchell and some others. That was costed out just last week at $66 billion. The hit on business, as I understand it from the National Federation of Independent Business, when you ask either they join the government system or they pay 7% in payroll taxes, would knock out something like 12 to 20% of our small businesses. That hit at this present time. You can't do that. So my view is, excuse me, you got two problems. One of them is these 35 million Americans, working class folks who don't have any health insurance. At the same time, people on welfare get Medicaid. Now you got to do something to take care of that problem. And my view would be something in the area, I think Mr. Bush is moving there, of tax credits, in other words, straight off income taxes, which they could buy health care, or buy health insurance. Moving in that direction. The second area, which is going to be of growing concern, because the folks are growing older, is you've got to find some way to provide for vital care in critical areas for older folks when their resources run out. And again, you're talking about, I mean, we owe that generation which carried us through the Depression, World War II, and the Cold War. Where you get the resources for this and how you do it, I don't know. People talk about moving from Medicare to a credit system. I don't have the answer to that. I do know that it's a commitment we ought to make as a people, and I think we're going to have to carry it out. But I have not sat down like Darman and all those folks and costed all these things out. I mean, they've got their computers running constantly, so I can only tell you sort of the general outlines of where I would go. And it's much more in terms of one more chance for the private enterprise system to do it, rather than the trend to take it all over with national health insurance, which I think would be a terrible mistake. One more. Got them all? Yes, sir.
Yeah, the press is such an obvious and big part of this process, and my question is whether whether you believe that the press is fairly and accurately characterizing your campaign and your platforms.
By and large, yes. I think I've got a tremendous amount of press coverage and attention. Some feel it's too much. I've gotten, I think, by and large, a very fair and comprehensive press, and I think I'm going to get a lot more ever since the recent poll came out, which showed me closing very fast on the president. There are some exceptions. I think there's some folks with a separate agenda who want to involve me in issues that are sideline issues, and every time you go somewhere they ask the same old questions about concerns that have nothing to do with New Hampshire and aren't on the minds of New Hampshire. But by and large, I have no complaints whatsoever about the press. As a matter of fact, my candidacy is very much dependent on the press. If I can't get covered, if my message doesn't get through television, WMUR in these stations, of America first, putting America first, making her first again, if my ideas can't get through, and they are getting through by radio, TV, and the written press, Union Leader, then you cannot win, you can't win in my terms. What I've got to do is this. You not only have to demonstrate that George Bush, which is not hard to do, broke his word and has helped put this economy in the dumpster, which we can demonstrate easily. I've got to convince Republicans who are very loyalist and royalist and stay with their man that the right thing to do, if we are a party of principle, is to deny the president renomination. Now that's a tough thing for a Republican to do. After he reaches that point, I've got to persuade him that this character over here, Pat Buchanan, who's just come into New Hampshire, represents the views and values, beliefs, and the leadership he would like to see in the White House. Now, given the fact that I don't hold elective office, that's a difficult thing to do. And so I'm very dependent on the media carrying my message and carrying me to the people of New Hampshire. And we're doing all right. As Jesse Jackson said, you know, we're moving on up from the outhouse to the White House, and I say from the McLaughlin Group to the G7. Thank you very much. Take it easy. Thanks,
Road to the White House is seen every Friday afternoon on C-SPAN at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 Pacific Time, and again Sunday nights at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. This week's edition of Road to the White House and the speeches by President Bush and syndicated columnist Patrick Buchanan can be seen again at about 1:40 a.m. Eastern Time, 10:40 p.m. in the West. Coming up next, we will first take a break for some late schedule information. Then we will bring you tonight's Democratic presidential candidates debate from Manchester, New Hampshire.
I believe 9:30 p.m.
C-SPAN, the cable satellite public affairs network, and its companion network, C-SPAN 2, are privately funded to serve the public by America's cable television companies.
Here is a brief look at programs in the hours ahead and a preview of some of tomorrow's highlights. Please note all listed times are Eastern. In just a few moments, we bring you a re-air of tonight's Democratic presidential candidates debate from Manchester, New Hampshire. Just past 1 o'clock, it's this week's edition of Prime Minister's Questions from the British House of Commons. After that, President Bush and his Republican presidential challenger, commentator Patrick Buchanan, campaign in New Hampshire on this week's edition of Road to the White House. At 3:10, it's oral argument from the California Supreme Court on redistricting. And taking a look at some of tomorrow's program highlights at 8 o'clock, the chief political correspondent for Newsweek and CBS News' political editor join us for a discussion and call-in program on current news events. At 9:30 tomorrow, it's highlights from the closing session of the Arab American Institute and discussion on the Middle East peace talks. And at 6 o'clock tomorrow, we bring you coverage of News One, the nightly newscast from Moscow.
Tuesday, Representative Carol Hubbard, Democrat of Kentucky, is the guest on our morning viewer call-in program. The congressman, who is a deputy whip and chairs the House Banking Subcommittee on Oversight, will discuss the Democrats' legislative agenda, the economy, and health care proposals before the House. Phone in with your questions and comments Tuesday beginning at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. New Hampshire voters go to the polls in about a month to cast votes in the first-in-the-nation Democratic and Republican primaries. Last week, President Bush and his Republican opponents campaigned in the Granite State. The 5 Democratic presidential hopefuls have also been talking to voters in various forums. Sunday night, former California Governor Jerry Brown, Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton, Iowa Senator Tom Harkin, Nebraska Senator Bob Kerrey, and former Massachusetts Senator Paul Tsongas gathered in the studios of WMUR-TV in Manchester, New Hampshire. For 2 hours, the candidates debated the key campaign issues. The debate was sponsored by WMUR-TV and was moderated by Cokie Roberts of ABC News.
A debate of the Democratic candidates for President of the United States in the New Hampshire primary, sponsored by the New Hampshire Democratic Party. Here is New Hampshire Democratic Party Chairman Chris Spiro.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Every 4 years in New Hampshire, we're honored with the presence of those who want to lead our nation. We have the chance to meet the candidates, to find out where they stand, to find out how well they listen. Tonight, the New Hampshire Democratic Party proudly sponsors a 2-hour debate between the 5 major Democratic presidential candidates. On the eve of this state's first day honoring Dr. Martin Luther King's successors, we remember the urgency of one single man's dream and the power of every single person. Tomorrow, we honor Dr. Martin Luther King, one of the most powerful and inspiring leaders of this century. He fought then, and we fight now, for justice, good education for all of this country's children, jobs and fair wages for all of this country's workers, and elections that represent the voice of every American. President George Bush has spent the better part of his presidency trying to save the world. Martin Luther King's birthday reminds us that we now need to concentrate on our neglected needs at home. We need to try to save ourselves. As we speak tonight, in New Hampshire, thousands are without a job. 1 in 4 of us is a serious illness away from financial disaster. Thousands of homes and businesses have been lost to foreclosure, and hundreds more will be lost between now and primary day, February the 18th. And far too many New Hampshire citizens tonight will go without a meal. With President Bush's budget deficit and misguided economic policies, we will never rebuild America's industries, rejuvenate our cities, educate our children, or walk the streets in safety. In these United States, we must demand that our working men and women are treated fairly on the job. We must demand that long-term health care is available to every American. We must insist that our cities are safe again. And we must demand that our teachers are revered as the custodians of our future, our children. There is only one sure way to make your voice heard. Next month at the polls, your vote is your voice. This is not a time to back away. Go to the candidates and find out where they stand. Listen closely tonight. And speak out on February 18th in this state's presidential primary election. As the chairman of the New Hampshire Democratic Party, I am proud to introduce the 5 major Democratic candidates for President of the United States. I am convinced one of them will be the next President of the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, Senator Tom Harkin from the state of Iowa, Senator Harkin. Former Governor of the state of California, Governor Jerry Brown. Senator Bob Kerrey of Nebraska, Senator Bob Kerrey. The Governor of the state of Arkansas, Governor Bill Clinton. Former United States Senator from the state of Massachusetts, Senator Paul Tsongas. The moderator for tonight's debate will be the distinguished journalist, nationally known, an analyst on National Public Radio, award-winning national journalist Cokie Roberts. She will set the agenda, ask all of the questions, and be the general referee for tonight's debate. Cokie Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's delightful to be here with you gentlemen tonight. As you know, and we will now tell the audience, the rules of this debate excuse me, are somewhat unusual. We have 3 subject areas. First, the economy, then education, then crime. Each candidate will speak for 1.5 minutes to my opening question on each one of these subjects, and then there will be a free-for-all, which I will try to referee on this full moon night. And then we will move on to the next subject, where they will have drawn lots to answer the next question in a different order. And finally, at the conclusion, there will be 3 minutes of concluding statements. So we will begin with the subject of the economy. And President Brown, it is January 20th, 1993. Last October, despite the best efforts of the Bureau of Labor Statistics to conceal it, the unemployment rate went to double digits. That's why you're president. What are you going to do within the next week to ease the suffering of the families of the unemployed?
Thanks, Cokie. And I want to thank Chris Spiro and all the staff and WMUR and their staff and all the people that are home listening to this and participating. I was elected governor, and I want to start there, on a promise of fighting any kind of taxes. I vowed not to raise taxes, and despite 2 national recessions, we took California from the 3rd highest tax state to the 24th. I mean, there's nothing like it ever been seen that I know of. I vetoed $1 billion in legislative proposals. I cut the income tax. I cut the inheritance tax. And I returned $1 billion, billions of dollars actually, to local government to facilitate local property tax. And I was endorsed in my re-election effort by the founder of the American Tax Revolt, Howard Jarvis, against a Republican. back in 1978. And as a result of all that, California experienced an incredible prosperity. During my 8 years, we created 1 out of every 4 jobs in the country. Personal income grew faster than any other state. Single-family homes, their value skyrocketed, and the value of California companies grew disproportionate to any other companies, the national average, rather. In fact, during that 8-year period that I was governor, California created more jobs than George Bush has in his 4 years, 2.2 million. Now, what I did for California, I want to do in that first week as President of the United States. And here's what I propose to do.
That's it for now. I'm afraid your time is up on your opening statement. You will have time to come back to it later, I'm afraid.
You've got a silver bullet proposal that we'll catch on the next
We'll hear about it after we hear from President Clinton on January 20th, 1993.
In the first week, I would issue an executive order to double the rate of highway funding in the first year to create 200,000 jobs. I would immediately raise the guarantee on middle-class home prices under the FHA program to get more people back in the home markets. I would present a bill to Congress to cut middle-class taxes and make up for it with an increase in taxes on the wealthy who are not presently paying their fair share. I would present to the Congress a long-term economic program which included affordable health care for all, national education and training programs, and great incentives, including an investment tax credit and a new business tax credit to get people investing in this economy. And I would work with the bank regulators to change this banking mess we've got now that prohibits them from making bank loans. And finally, I would throw out a lifeline to the people, like so many people I've met in New Hampshire, whose unemployment, welfare, and food stamp rolls have tripled in the last 3 years. To those who've lost their health insurance or their homes, I would provide for emergency aid for them over the ensuing 12 months until we got the economy turned around. These are specific things we could do to lift the spirits of this country, things that I have seen in the eyes of the people here in New Hampshire, hurting and longing for these kinds of answers, and I would try to give them.
Okay. President Tsongas, January 20th, 1993.
Thank you very much. I think the most important thing to understand is what's wrong. And what I would do as president is simply to make it very clear that the basic economic reality that we face in this country is very simple. The Cold War is over. Japan won, and Germany won, and Taiwan won. That is the basic reality. And because of that, there are thousands of people hurting in New Hampshire, but in other states as well. My job as president is really very simple. Present to the country on the first day, not the first week, a viable economic battle plan, which George Bush has not done. This plan is very simple. We must have a vibrant, competitive, thriving manufacturing base. That is the only engine possible, which means high-paid Americans making the highest quality products in the world and exporting those products all over the globe and bringing that money back home so there's prosperity here in America. You're not going to make that engine run. You're not going to have that manufacturing base by Japan bashing. You have to be better than they are. And you're not going to bring about that kind of manufacturing base with 97 cents a day tax cuts to middle-class Americans. That doesn't add 1 penny to the productive capacity of America. How do you do it? You have to give our companies venture capital, and you have to give them equity capital. That means a targeted capital gains tax cut for the proper investments held long-term.
You will have to tell us the rest later. You're out of time. It's now time for President Harkin on January 20th.
Thank you very much, Coheed. Well, the first thing you'd have to do as president is to extend unemployment benefits. One of the things that President Bush didn't want to do when so many people in New Hampshire were hurting and their unemployment benefits were running out. That's the first thing you want to do, is to make sure that families don't go hungry and don't go homeless in America. That's number one. Secondly, I would have, in the process between the election and Inauguration Day, set into motion a process whereby we could get money down to our local communities to put people to work immediately on things like building bridges and roads and sewer and water systems, plans that are already on the shelves in many of our communities here in New Hampshire and all over the country. And it would get the money down to the local level where they can put people to work immediately on these projects. I hear Governor Clinton say that he would put money into a highway program to get 200,000 people to work. That's funny. A couple of months ago, I read his proposal was 45,000 jobs, so evidently he's coming up a little bit on that. I've said before, I don't want to just put 45,000 people to work. I want to put millions of people to work in America. Under my economic program of stopping spending for the B-2 bomber, cutting down the defense of Europe, the subsidization we do in Europe. Bring that money home and get it down to our local communities right away and put millions of Americans to work, not a couple of 100,000.
And President Kerry.
Oh, Cokie, I'd come to the American people and say that what's going on in New Hampshire and the rest of the economy is like a national disaster. It's like a natural disaster of a tornado or a hurricane that's ripping through communities, particularly New Hampshire, destroying tens of thousands of jobs. For the small business person that I talked to that had his loan called even though he's never missed a payment, it is a disaster. And it's a disaster for the people that work for Sullivan and Claremont who have seen a 3/4 reduction in force just because our government policy doesn't provide incentive for investment. I would come to the American people and say there's 3 things we're going to do immediately. 1, middle-class tax reduction will stimulate the economy. Secondly, we'll have tax credit in order to bring real investment into plant and equipment. And third, we're going to get banking capital into our banking system so our banks can start making loans again to small businesses. But I'll also come to the American people and say this. Look, we didn't get into this mess overnight, and we're not going to get out of it overnight. My economic strategy has a purpose, and that is higher wages, higher income. And I will fight for 5 specific things. I will fight, first of all, for trade policies that give us the possibility of opening up markets for goods and services, our goods and services in the world. I'll fight for national health insurance. I'll fight, thirdly, for a national industrial policy that, again, focuses on lifting our income and lifting our wages. I will fight for a national education policy, that focuses on early childhood education and job training in the workforce. And I will say that fifth, we're going to begin today to build the best transportation communication system in the world. I will say to the American working people, I know if you have the tools and the training, you can get the job done.
We've got an argument going here, obviously. Senator Tsongas, you say no tax cut. It's something that people in your party and Congress are certainly talking about doing pretty quick. What do you think why are you on the opposite end of this?
Well, my position is the same as the New York Times, the same as Business Week, the same as economist John Kenneth Galbraith on the left and Alan Greenspan on the right. The argument for the middle-class tax cut is coming from the media consultants, the polling data. 97 cents a day does not do a thing to invest in this country. If you want to spend $30 billion, you're either going to take it by more debt or you take it out of other programs. The fundamental requirement is to get the manufacturing base viable and competitive and thriving. And the problem with the tax cut is what's happening now is there's a sense that the Democrats are going to do it. So what does George Bush do? He wants to do the same thing. So what we have now is the promise of much higher deficits down the road, and now you begin to see long-term interest rates begin to climb. Why? Not because the economy is coming back, because the markets fear that you're going to have a bidding war where the Democrats and the Republicans are going to bid against each other to cut those taxes that have no impact on competitiveness, and that over the long term is disastrous for everybody.
Well, Paul, I got a very different kind of proposal, because I think every time you fiddle with that tax code as you want or as some of the others want, it just plays into the hands of lobbyists. Here's what I propose. I propose to get rid of the personal income tax, to get rid of the payroll tax on employer and employee. I propose to get rid of the excise taxes of the federal government on gasoline and on telephones and on airlines. Get rid of the gift and estate tax. Get rid of the corporate tax. Get rid of all of them. It provides a burden, a nightmare for people, and replace it in exchange with a flat tax. A flat tax on personal income with unadjusted gross income and on business value added. And you can put a tax of between 13 and 14%. No deductions except for charitable, for home mortgage deduction, and for rent. Other than that, no deductions. And with a tax, a flat tax, you simplify the code, you get rid of the nightmare, the lawyers, the bureaucracy, you get rid of the corruption where the lobbyists are buying tax loopholes, and you present something that is simple to the American people. It'll stimulate the economy, it'll create jobs, and I know from my experience in California, when we cut taxes, we created jobs, and there isn't a state in this country that can measure up to that 8-year record. And I think the time is not to fiddle with this nightmare of a tax code, but just simply cut the Gordian knot and have a flat tax rate of no more than 13 to 14% on personal income and on business value.
But Jerry, the appeal,
that'll do it.
The appeal of that was the same appeal that drove us in the 1986 tax reform to try to make our tax code simpler. But the fact of the matter is what's happened in the 1980s is that for middle-income people, their taxes have gone up disproportionate to the taxes for the rest of the economy. The fact of the matter is that real deficit reduction right now, Jerry, is being done mostly by people who get paid by the hour because we raise their FICA taxes. I don't propose, by the way, Paul, that we're going to massively stimulate the economy by doing a tax reduction for middle-income people. I see it mostly on the basis of equity, although I do think they will make purchases. They're apt to make more marginal purchases. The principal difference that I think that must be expressed in this campaign is that I don't think any laundry list is going to get the job done. We need fundamental change in the way we finance health care. Otherwise, we are going to continue to devour resources with rising costs of health care and trap people in the workplace with pre-existing medical conditions. And I've got a specific proposal to do that. We need to do the same thing with an industrial policy. Paul's got a terrific industrial policy that says that what we got to do in the first place is support those technologies that create high-paying jobs and then reinforce it with regulation and tax policies that will allow us to compete against Germany and Japan that have done precisely that. And most important of all, we have to say that we are going to begin today to invest in the best transportation, the best communication system in the world, because it's apt to be that all of us, if we begin the investment today, it's apt to be that all of us will be gone from the scene when those investments come to pass. We've got to be prepared to look out there in the future and say the investments we make now will lift the next generation to a new era of economic prosperity.
The other area that...
Wait a minute, I want to say just one thing. I want to make it very clear that this middle-class tax cut, in my view, is central to any attempt we're going to make to have a short-term economic strategy and a long-term fairness strategy, which is part of getting this country going again. Middle-class people in this country worked harder for less money and paid higher taxes for 10 years. The wealthiest people made more money and paid lower taxes. I don't propose to increase the deficit. My middle-class tax cut is revenue neutral. $400. People say it's not very much money. I think it's a lot of money. It's enough for a mortgage payment. It's enough for clothes for the kids. And it's enough to have a big short-term impact on this economy when those working people either pay their consumer debt down or start spending it. I agree with Paul. Over the long run, we need a big investment strategy. And a lot of us share a common commitment to that. But we have had a decade in which this country went from ranking of the 22 biggest countries in the world, richest countries, we ranked 8th in 1980 in income equality. Now we are dead last because the middle class has gotten the shaft. And I think this is nothing more than a down payment on pulling this country together again and getting it going. I think it is very, very important.
Senator
First, again, I'm going to leap into this too. First of all, in this so-called flat tax, that sounds like something proposed by believers in the Flat Earth Society too. And it has about the same kind of basis as substance. A flat tax is regressive any way you cut it. Secondly, on this middle income tax break that Governor Clinton and Senator Kerry are talking about, I agree with Paul Tsongas on this. He's absolutely right on this issue. It's nothing. What they're talking about is about $1 a day. They're going to give you about $1 a day for a family. And not only that, but the proposal that Governor Clinton is coming up with, let me tell you what it does. If you make $20,000 a year, you'll get about $105. That's only 30 cents a day. But if you make $100,000, you get $850. That's the kind of proposal that Governor Clinton's coming out with. And it falls in line with what he's done in Arkansas. Here's something from the Arkansas Gazette that says here, Clinton's plan sticks it to the little guy. Sales tax on food and utilities, on used cars of $2,000. If that's what he's done in Arkansas, what's he going to do as president? Stick it to the little guy again?
Let me answer this.
30 cents a day.
Let me answer this. I think it is very interesting. Senator Harkin doesn't want to give middle-class people a $400 tax break, but he thinks it was fine to give himself a $23,000 pay raise. $400 is a lot of money. All these people, Paul Tsongas mentioned, liberals and conservatives, they all make good incomes. $400 is nothing to them. Second thing I'd like to say is it's interesting to me that he opposes my sales tax increase, which cost the average family of $400, which was directed to education to make them wealthier and secure their children's future, and which was, I might add, overwhelmingly supported by the people of my state, while the Congress was withdrawing aid from the states. And almost every state in the country, including Iowa, raised the sales tax to help education. That's $100. He thinks that's terrible. even though it did a lot of good, but he's all against the $400 tax credit. That's what's wrong. These people in Washington just don't get it. Too many of them are so out of touch with the average run-of-the-mill person that they have literally presided over the demise of the middle class. That is what we're seeing, and it's really sad, I think.
Again, your tax break gives $105 to someone making $20,000 a year and $850 to someone making $100,000 a year, and that's Reaganomics. That's trickle-down economics.
Let's move on from taxes then to
Let
another.
me just make one response to what Senator Harkin said. Look, there's nothing more regressive than a gas tax. There's nothing more regressive than the Social Security tax that's been raised 7 times and only applies to people until they make over $53,000 a year. What I'm saying is you simplify it, you make a flat tax, no more than 13%, and that will stimulate this economy just like we saw in California, and you'll see millions of jobs, you'll see people working again, and that's, after all, what this whole economic debate's about.
Can I comment on the issue we're supposed to be talking about here? The issue is not pay raises. The issue is the economy of this country. And I would just like to issue a warning. If we have in this country a situation which is now ensuing, where Democrats and Republicans begin to outbid each other, you're going to see George Bush come back next week with some real promises that will add to the deficit. The long-run implications of the two parties bidding for things which have political appeal, which the media consultants are forcing upon them, the long-run implications of higher long-term debt is going to wipe out any advantage you would have with that middle-class tax cut. And I just would like to issue a warning that people can watch this bidding and understand what's at stake.
Another area that has political appeal, which you mentioned earlier, Senator Tsongas, is Japan bashing. Senator Harkin, you have been quoted as saying that you were proud to have been accused of being a protectionist. Are you eager to protect American consumers from high-quality, low-priced imports?
No, and you'll never hear me bash Japan. I have a lot of respect for Japan. I lived there for a year and a half. They're doing what's in their best interest. What you will hear me do is bash George Bush, because he's also doing what's in Japan's best interest. And we need a president who will do what's in our best interest. I believe in free trade, but free trade's got to be a two-way street, not a one-way bridge. He takes those 3 big executives, General Motors and Ford and Chrysler over there, they're all making $3, $5, $8 million a year.
So would you support
and he takes them over there as representatives of American business. He didn't take over any minorities. He didn't take women. He didn't take small business people. He didn't take farmers. He didn't take some of the people that are making our high-tech computers and our chips over there. No. He takes probably the worst example of what's wrong with American business.
I think he took Mrs. Bush, but
the best thing he took.
Are you supporting the legislation from Majority Leader Dick Gephardt in terms of keeping out Japanese cars?
Listen, we have to get tough on Japan. I saw a Japanese on television said that the reason we're selling so many cars over here is because that's what you American consumers want to buy. Fair enough. But I also tell you the price of sirloin